She came into the room to clean, but accidentally fell asleep on the millionaire's bed. He saw in her the face of a love that destroyed him in the past and decided to lock her in the same room where he lost everything. If this story got you hooked, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. The rain tapped against the windows of the Isadora Hotel like impatient fingers, creating a melancholy symphony that echoed through the empty corridors. Emma Bennett pushed her cleaning cart across the Persian carpet that cost more than her entire life, her footsteps muffled by the thickness of luxury that would never be hers. It was 3 a.m, the hour when the rich slept and the poor worked, when the ghosts of the powerful whispered their secrets to silk-lined walls. At 19, Emma knew every stain in that hotel better than her own soul. She knew where magnates spilled champagne during nights of dirty business, where socialites cried tears of frustration in marble bathrooms, where politicians signed contracts that would decide the fate of millions. She was invisible, a shadow, cleaning the trails of others' decadence, the daughter of nobody raised by a grandmother who prayed more than she spoke. Emma's body had been burning with a low fever for 3 days. The flu she had contracted in the slum where she lived in Boston didn't respect her work shifts. Grandma Ruth always said that poor people couldn't afford the luxury of getting sick, and Emma had swallowed that poison along with the expired antibiotics she'd managed to get from the free clinic. But that night, her eyes were watering so much she could barely see, and each movement was a battle against her own body, begging for rest. The presidential suite should have been empty. The last guest had departed in the morning, and the new reservation wouldn't arrive until the next day. Emma swiped the magnetic card with trembling hands, pushing open the heavy door that swung like a portal to another world. The room exuded silent opulence, burgundy velvet curtains that seemed to absorb the light, furniture of noble wood that told stories of lost dynasties, and a king-size bed occupying the center like an altar dedicated to pleasure. Emma began working on autopilot, her movements mechanical from years of practice. She vacuumed the carpet, polished the furniture, organized imported magazines on the coffee table. But when she approached the bed to change the sheets, something paralyzed her. The mattress seemed to call to her, whispering promises of relief she had never known. In her 19 years of life, Emma had never slept in a bed that didn't creak, never felt sheets that weren't rough against her skin. The fever made her delirious. For a moment she imagined herself as one of the hotel's guests, someone who could sleep between Egyptian cotton sheets without fear of being thrown out. The temptation grew like a serpent coiling around her conscience. Just 5 minutes, she thought, just to feel what it would be like to have the right to rest. Emma removed her worn shoes and lay down on the bed for the first time in her life. The mattress embraced her like a cloud, molding to her thin body with a gentleness that made her cry. She closed her eyes, promising herself it would be just a moment, just until the headache passed. The sound of rain became a lullaby, and for the first time since her grandmother's death, Emma slept without fear. This was how Nathan Blackwood found her. He returned to the hotel to retrieve forgotten documents when he saw the light on in the presidential suite. Nathan possessed a sharp intuition for dangers and opportunities, the fruit of decades building an empire over the bones of his enemies. But when he opened the door and saw Emma sleeping in his bed, something primitive and inexplicable took hold of his chest. She was lying on her side, chestnut hair spread across the pillow like waves of chocolate, one arm folded under her delicate face that carried traces of a beauty not yet fully awakened. She wore the simple uniform of the hotel staff, but there was something in her posture that didn't match submission. Even asleep, Emma seemed to be conquering territory. Nathan should have called security. He should have shouted, fired her on the spot, made a scandal that would echo through the corridors until dawn. But he couldn't take his eyes off the woman sleeping in his bed, as if she had every right in the world to be there. There was something familiar about her, a distant echo of a voice that still haunted him in the early hours. Olivia. The name emerged in his mind like a slap. The woman he had loved with the intensity of someone who knows no limits, who disappeared on a stormy night 5 years ago, leaving only ashes from a fire and questions that would never be answered. Emma had the same curve in her neck, the same a way of pursing her lips while sleeping. But it couldn't be. Olivia was dead. She had to be. Emma woke feeling the weight of a gaze upon her. She opened her eyes slowly, still enveloped in the mist of the first restful sleep in weeks, and found a man standing at the foot of the bed. Tall, imposing, wearing a suit that cost more than her annual salary, he was watching her with an intensity that made her blood freeze. Emma sat up in bed with her heart racing, trying to process the reality crashing down on her like an avalanche. The man before her wasn't just any guest. She recognized that face from newspapers, from business magazines she sometimes leafed through during work breaks. Nathan Blackwood, the magnate who collected companies like trophies and had a reputation for destroying careers with a simple raise of an eyebrow. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know you were here. Emma tried to stand, but her legs trembled. The fever was still consuming her, and the fear of losing her job made her stagger. Nathan didn't move. He continued to stare at her with those dark eyes that seemed to dissect every detail of her soul. There was something predatory in his posture, but also a strange vulnerability, as if she were simultaneously prey and salvation. "Do you have any idea where you are?" His voice was deep, controlled, each word heavy as lead. "This suite costs $3,000 a night, and you decided to use it as your personal bed." "I was sick, sir. I'm sorry, it was a mistake. It will never happen again." Emma forced herself to stand, but Nathan raised a hand, a simple gesture that paralyzed her in place. "What is your full name?" "Emma Bennett, sir." The surname hit Nathan like a shot. Bennett. Olivia was also Bennett before becoming Blackwood, before disappearing in the smoke of a fire that still burned in his nightmares. It couldn't be coincidence. In his world, coincidences didn't exist, only pieces of a game he didn't yet fully understand. "Bennett," he repeated the name, savoring each syllable. "Do you have family?" "I had. My grandmother died last year. Why are you asking this?" Emma tried to keep her voice firm, but there was something in the way he looked at her that made her feel as if she were being evaluated for a purpose she didn't know. Nathan walked to the window, contemplating the city that stretched at his feet like a kingdom that belonged to him. Boston shone in the early morning, its lights blinking like fallen stars, and he felt the familiar weight of absolute power running through his veins. But he also felt something new, a restlessness he couldn't name. "Did your grandmother leave?" "Debts?" he asked without turning. "How do you know that?" Emma took a step back, the instinct to flee screaming in her ears, but her legs were still shaking, and there was nowhere to run in a room on the 40th floor. "I know many things, Emma Bennett." Nathan turned slowly, and she saw something dangerous dancing in his eyes. "I know your grandmother owed $30,000 to the hospital where she was treated. I know you work 16 hours a day trying to pay off a debt you'll never be able to clear. I know you don't have anyone in the world." Emma's blood ran cold. How could he know such intimate details of her life? "What do you want from me?" "The right question is, what do you want from me?" Nathan approached her slowly, like a predator circling its prey. "You entered my suite, slept in my bed, breathed the air I pay to breathe. That has a price." Emma raised her chin in a gesture of defiance that surprised them both. Even terrified, even feverish and alone, there was something untamable in her spirit that refused to completely bow. "How much? How much do I owe for the time I spent here? I'll work to pay it, even if it takes years." Nathan smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. It was the expression of a man who had just found exactly what he was looking for. "Years," he repeated the word, savoring it. "Interesting that you mentioned that, because that's exactly what I'm offering." From the inner pocket of his jacket, Nathan withdrew an envelope that seemed to have been prepared long before that night. Emma watched with growing horror as he opened the document and extended it to her. "Your hospital debt was paid off this morning. In your name has been opened an investment fund that will yield enough to keep you comfortable for the rest of your life. Our house in Beacon Hill has been purchased and deeded in your name. Your education will be fully financed, including college and graduate studies in any area you choose." Emma took the paper with trembling hands. The words danced before her eyes, but the numbers were unmistakable. Her financial freedom was there, printed on letterhead, real and tangible as a miracle. In exchange for what? Her voice came out as a strangled whisper. In exchange for you. Nathan came close enough that she could feel the heat of his body, the expensive cologne that exuded power and danger. You will live on my property. You will be my companion when I desire. You will be available to me in all ways I consider appropriate for 5 years. You're buying me. It wasn't a question. I'm offering an exchange, your financial freedom for your exclusive dedication. Nathan's eyes gleamed with an intensity that made Emma back away. You can refuse, of course. Return to your life of misery, work 16 hours a day until you die of exhaustion like your grandmother. Or you can accept my proposal and discover what kind of life a woman like you deserves to live. Emma looked at the contract again. The letters seemed to pulse before her eyes, as if they had a life of their own. She thought of the slum where she lived, the thin mattress on bricks, the bills that accumulated like dead weight on her conscience. She thought of hands cracked from scrubbing floors, of the body aging prematurely under the weight of poverty. And if I want to leave before the 5 years are up? Then you will go, but you'll take only the clothes on your back. Nathan tilted his head, studying every micro-expression on her face. The choice is yours, Emma Bennett, but choose now. This offer won't be repeated. Emma closed her eyes, trying to silence the tumult in her mind. When she opened them again, there was something different in her gaze, a determination born of despair itself. Where do I sign? The car that came to pick up Emma was a silent machine of luxury, the type of vehicle she had only seen in movies. The driver didn't say a word during the entire journey, and Nathan remained, focused on his tablet, agile fingers sliding across the screen while making decisions that moved millions. Emma pressed her face against the window, watching Boston transform around her. The slums and public housing projects gave way to middle-class neighborhoods, which in turn yielded to the mansions and luxury condominiums of the city's hills. Nathan's property was in Chestnut Hill, hidden behind high walls and wrought-iron gates that opened automatically when they approached. Emma felt her stomach tighten when the car serpentined along a driveway lined with century-old trees, their crowns forming a green ceiling that filtered the morning light into golden patterns. It was like entering another world, a realm where the rules of reality she knew didn't apply. The mansion appeared before them like an apparition from a feverish dream. 3 stories of neoclassical architecture, with marble columns supporting ornate balconies and windows that reflected the sky like empty eyes. Perfectly manicured gardens extended in all directions, punctuated by marble statues that seemed to watch every movement. There was something disturbing about the perfection of that place, as if it were an elaborate staging of life instead of real life. Welcome to your new home. Nathan finally broke the silence, but his voice sounded distant, as if he were speaking more to himself than to her. Emma got out of the car on trembling legs. It wasn't just nervousness, she realized, but something in the air of that place that made her feel displaced, as if she were treading on sacred ground without permission. The breeze carried the scent of roses and jasmine, but there was an undertone of melancholy that made her chest tighten. It's beautiful, she murmured, and it was true even if the beauty came with a sense of isolation that made her think of golden prisons. Olivia said the same thing. The words escaped Nathan's lips before he could contain them. Emma turned to him, but his face had already resumed the mask of impassive control. Who is Olivia? Someone who no longer exists. Nathan walked toward the main entrance, his long strides forcing Emma to hurry to keep up with him. You don't need to worry about ghosts of the past. But Emma was already worrying. There was something in the way he pronounced that name, a mixture of pain and desire that made all her self-preservation instincts scream in her mind. Who was this woman who no longer existed? And why did the mention of her name make Nathan's eyes shine with dangerous intensity? The interior of the mansion was even more impressive than the exterior. The entrance hall extended upward for 2 floors, dominated by a white marble staircase that curved gracefully like the wings of a swan. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen tears, sending prisms of golden light across walls covered in French wallpaper. Paintings by old masters watched from their ornate frames, their painted eyes seeming to follow Emma as she walked. "Mrs. Winters will take care of your basic needs." Nathan gestured to a middle-aged woman who materialized from the shadows like a well-dressed ghost. She had grey hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that had seen too much to still be surprised by anything. "She has managed the house for 15 years and knows all the rules." "Rules?" Emma asked, but Nathan was already climbing the staircase, expecting her to follow. The corridor on the second floor extended in both directions, lined with solid wood doors that remained closed like guarded secrets. Nathan stopped before a double door in the center of the corridor, removing a golden key from his pocket. "This will be your room." He opened the doors, revealing an environment that took Emma's breath away. The suite was larger than the entire house where she grew up, dominated by a four-poster bed covered with navy blue silk curtains. French windows opened onto a balcony that offered a panoramic view of the gardens and the city in the distance. Antique furniture of noble wood complemented the decor, and delicate floral-patterned wallpaper covered the walls. "It's too beautiful." Emma walked around the room as if she were in a museum, afraid to touch anything. "But I don't deserve—" "You deserve exactly what I decide you deserve." Nathan's voice cut through the air like a blade. "And I decided you deserve this." Emma turned to him, looking for signs of kindness in his expression, but found only that familiar intensity that made her feel like an insect under a magnifying glass. There was something possessive in the way he looked at her, as if she were already a piece of his private collection. "What exactly do you expect from me?" she asked, forcing herself to maintain eye contact, even though every instinct screamed for her to lower her eyes. "For now? That you get used to your new life, that you stop looking like a frightened animal every time I talk to you." Nathan approached her slowly, and Emma could feel the heat radiating from his body. "That you learn to trust me." "And you, will you trust me?" Nathan laughed, but the sound contained no humor. "Trust is something that's built, Emma, and building takes time." He walked to an antique dresser near the window, opening a drawer and removing something that made Emma's blood freeze. It was a golden brooch in the shape of a key, delicately crafted with details that seemed to tell a story, identical to the one her grandmother had kept as the most precious possession she owned. "Where did you get that?" Emma's voice came out as a strangled whisper. "It was Olivia's." Nathan turned the brooch between his fingers, the morning light making the gold shine. "She said it was a family heirloom, something that had belonged to her aunt, a woman who died very young in tragic circumstances." Emma's world began to spin. Her grandmother had always spoken of a younger sister who disappeared when she was just a girl, a story shrouded in mystery and tears that she had never fully understood. Claire, that was the name. Claire Bennett, who had left home at 17, to work in Boston and never sent word again. What was Olivia's full name, Emma asked, although part of her already knew the answer. Olivia Claire Bennett Blackwood. Nathan approached her, extending the brooch. "My wife." Until the night she disappeared in flames, leaving only ashes and this brooch behind. Emma backed away, her back hitting the wall. The pieces of a puzzle she didn't know existed began to fit together in her mind, forming an image that terrified her. "You knew." It wasn't a question. "You knew who I was from the moment you saw me at the hotel." Nathan smiled, and this time, there was something genuinely dangerous in that expression. "I knew exactly who you were, Emma Bennett. The question is, do you know?" Emma spent the first days in the mansion like a ghost in her own life, walking through the endless corridors and trying to process the revelation that had shaken the foundations of everything she believed she knew about herself. Olivia was Claire, the lost sister of her grandmother, the woman whose disappearance had transformed a happy family into a collection of silences and whispered prayers. And now Emma was living in the same house, possibly sleeping in the same bed, breathing the air laden with memories of a tragedy that had preceded her birth. Nathan had disappeared after the revelation, departing on one of his business trips that lasted days without any explanation. Emma suspected he had done this purposefully, giving her time to absorb the truth while he observed from afar like a spider waiting to see if his prey would struggle or accept the web. His absence should have brought relief, but instead Emma found herself anxiously awaiting his return, as if his disturbing presence had become a drug she was already beginning to develop a dependency on. Mrs. Winters proved to be a silent and efficient guardian, appearing with elaborate meals 3 times a day and expensive clothes that fit Emma's body perfectly, as if someone had taken her measurements while she slept. The housekeeper spoke only the essentials, but her eyes carried stories that would never be told, and Emma realized that she knew much more about the secrets of that house than she would ever reveal. Miss should not walk the corridors after midnight, Mrs. Winters murmured one afternoon while arranging clothes in the closet that was larger than the entire apartment where Emma had grown up. This house has its own moods, especially when the moon is full. What kind of moods? Emma asked, but the housekeeper had already left the room, leaving only the echo of hurried steps and the persistent scent of roses that seemed to permeate every corner of the mansion. On the 4th night alone, Emma could no longer resist the curiosity that was corroding her insides like acid. She waited until she was sure everyone in the house was asleep, then slipped out of her room in bare feet, exploring the corridors that extended like veins through the 3 floors of the mansion. The moonlight filtered through the tall windows, creating ghostly patterns on the walls and making the marble statues seem to be watching her every move. It was on the 3rd floor that she found it, a door hidden behind a bookshelf that moved, with a touch, revealing a spiral staircase that descended into the depths of the house. Emma hesitated for a moment, Mrs. Winters' warnings echoing in her mind, but the need to understand her own story was stronger than fear. The staircase led to an underground library that took Emma's breath away. The walls were covered with shelves that extended from floor to ceiling, filled with leather-bound books that exuded the smell of ancient knowledge and guarded secrets. But it wasn't the books that made her blood freeze, but what was written on their spines. Names, women's names. Emma walked slowly between the shelves, reading the titles that appeared to be private biographies. Jessica Reynolds, 1987 to 1989. Melissa Carter, 1990 to 1993. Vanessa Hayes, 1995 to 1998. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, organized chronologically like macabre trophies of past conquests. All ended abruptly, without explanation, just dates marking the beginning and end of relationships that clearly had not ended well. At the end of the library, on a shelf separate from the others, she found what she was looking for. Olivia Clare. Bennett Blackwood, 2018 to 2020. The book was thicker than the others, bound in red leather that seemed to pulse under the weak light of the library. With trembling hands, Emma removed it from the shelf and opened it. The pages were filled with Nathan's handwriting, an elegant script that contrasted with the disturbing content. He had documented every aspect of Olivia's life with scientific obsession. Her food preferences, her sexual preferences, the books she read, the songs she hummed in the shower. There were photographs pasted on the pages, showing Olivia in intimate moments that she clearly didn't know were being captured. But it was the last entry that made Emma's world stop spinning. March 15, 2020, Olivia tried to escape today. I found her at the main gate with a suitcase, crying and shouting about freedom and golden prisons. She said she was pregnant, that she couldn't raise a child in this environment of control and obsession. I took her back to her room and locked the door. She needs to understand that I love her too much to let her leave. True love sometimes requires sacrifices that only one of the lovers understands. March 20th, 2020. The fire started in Olivia's room at 3 in the morning. When I managed to break down the door, she had disappeared. I found only ashes, the key brooch she loved so much, and an open window that led to the precipice. The body was never found. Sometimes at night I can still hear her voice calling me through the windows, or perhaps it's just the wind. Emma closed the book with trembling hands, but something fell from between the pages. It was a photograph she hadn't seen before. Olivia pregnant in profile, a protective hand over her growing belly. On the back, written in her handwriting, was a message that made Emma's blood turn to ice. For my niece, who is yet to be born. If something happens to me, seek the truth in the key our family keeps. Love should not be a prison. Aunt Claire. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made Emma turn in panic. Nathan was descending slowly, wearing only pajama pants, his bare torso revealing muscles that spoke of discipline and absolute control. Over himself. His eyes gleamed in the dimness like those of a predator who had finally found his prey exactly where he expected. Curiosity is a dangerous trait in a woman, Emma. His voice echoed through the library like a venomous whisper, especially when that curiosity concerns ghosts that should remain buried. She was pregnant. Emma raised the photograph with trembling hands. Olivia was pregnant when she died. When she disappeared. Nathan corrected, approaching her with calculated steps. And yes, she was, with a child who would have been my heir, my legacy, the proof that our love was real and lasting. You kept her prisoner. Emma backed up until her back touched the shelf behind her. All these women, you collect them like objects. I love them. Nathan stopped a few inches from her, so close that Emma could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Completely, obsessively. In a way, most men don't have the courage to love, and in return they give me their total devotion. And when they try to leave, Nathan smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. They learn that sometimes love requires sacrifices, and that some sacrifices are permanent. Emma felt the weight of reality falling on her like an avalanche. She wasn't just a substitute for Olivia. She was the next piece in a macabre collection that stretched back decades, and now that she knew the truth, Nathan would never let her leave alive. You're afraid, he observed, tilting his head like a scholar examining an interesting specimen. Good. Fear makes love more intense. Olivia took months to learn that. I hope you're faster. Emma forced herself to raise her chin, finding courage she didn't know she possessed. And if I don't want to learn? Nathan leaned forward until his lips almost touched her ear. Then you will learn the same way all the others did. Through pain. The days following the discovery of the library transformed Emma from prey to predator. She continued to play the role of the frightened young woman, but now there was calculation behind every gesture, strategy in every word. Nathan believed he had tamed her with revelations and threats, but Emma realized he had made a crucial mistake. He had underestimated the Bennett blood that ran in her veins, the same rebellious blood that had led Olivia to defy a man who controlled empires. Emma began to study Nathan with the same scientific obsession he had dedicated to the women in his collection. She observed how he took his coffee in the morning, always with 2 teaspoons of sugar and a pinch of cinnamon. She noticed that he slept only 4 hours a night, the rest of the time dedicated to international phone calls and contracts that moved fortunes. She discovered that he had an irregular scar on his right shoulder that he touched unconsciously when he was nervous. More importantly, she realized that Nathan was as obsessed with her as he had been with Olivia. He appeared in the most unexpected places, in the garden when she walked among the roses, in the main library when she pretended to read, in the kitchen when she talked with Mrs. Winters. His eyes followed her with an intensity that bordered on devotion, and Emma understood that this obsession was both her prison and her weapon. "You're different," Nathan commented one morning while they had breakfast on the veranda overlooking Boston. "More present, as if you finally accepted your new reality." Emma raised her eyes from the croissant she had pretended to eat, offering him a smile. She had practiced in the mirror until it looked genuine. "Maybe I've realized that fighting against this would be futile. You always get what you want, don't you?" "Always." Nathan leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "It's reassuring to see that you're smarter than some of the others." "Tell me about them." Emma let curiosity tinge her voice, as if she were a teenager asking about ex-girlfriends. "About the women who came before me." Nathan's face hardened momentarily, but then relaxed into something that almost looked like nostalgia. Each was special in her own way. Jessica had a laugh that could make a man forget his own sins. Melissa, Drew like a fallen angel. Vanessa sang opera in 3 languages. And Olivia. Olivia was... Nathan paused, searching for words that could contain the immensity of his obsession. Olivia was perfection made flesh. Intelligent, challenging, passionate. She loved me with the same intensity that I loved her. Until she tried. To escape, Emma completed, watching how Nathan's hands closed into fists on the table, until she chose madness instead of reason. Nathan drank his coffee slowly, as if he were savoring a bitter memory. She thought she was being kept prisoner, but couldn't understand that I was protecting her from a world that would have destroyed her purity. Emma forced herself to maintain a neutral expression, but inside she was boiling. Olivia hadn't chosen madness, she had chosen freedom, even if it meant death. And now Emma understood why Nathan had brought her to that house. He wanted a second chance to completely possess a Bennett woman, to prove to himself that he could love without destroying. That afternoon, while Nathan was in meetings, Emma explored the mansion more deeply. It was in the room that had been Olivia's that she found the next piece of the puzzle. The room had been preserved exactly as Olivia had left it. Feminine furniture in pastel tones, photographs of her and Nathan in apparently happy moments, and a wardrobe still full of expensive dresses that smelled of dried roses. But it was under a loose floorboard that Emma discovered the real treasure. A small metal box, protected by a delicate lock that perfectly accepted the key her grandmother had kept for so many years. Inside, letters written in Olivia's handwriting to a niece she knew was to come. "My dear Emma," said the first letter, "if you're reading this, it means you've managed to find the truth our family has kept for generations. It means you're stronger than I was, smarter than I managed to be." The letters revealed an Olivia different from the one Nathan had described, a woman who had pretended love for months while meticulously planning her escape, who had purposely become pregnant, not out of love but as a distraction for her plans, who had studied each pattern of Nathan's behavior, each weakness, each blind spot. "He has a brother," Olivia wrote in one of the last letters. "Daniel Blackwood, the adopted son who was banished from the family after a violent fight over the inheritance. Nathan fears him more than anything in the world, because Daniel knows all his secrets and has nothing to lose. If you need an ally, look for him, but be careful, he's almost as dangerous as Nathan, just in different ways." The last letter was different from the others, written in haste with a trembling hand that spoke of desperation and final determination. "Today is the night. Nathan discovered my plans and locked me in the room. He thinks he will break me, that he will make me beg forgiveness as the others did. But he doesn't understand that we, Bennett women, prefer to die free than to live in chains. I will find a way to get out of here, even if it means leaving behind the child I carry. If I don't manage it, I leave this mission to you. Destroy him, not with violence but with his own obsession. Make him love you more than he loved me, and then show him what it's really like to lose everything." Emma folded the letters with trembling hands. Olivia had escaped. She was sure of it. The fire, the disappearance, everything had been an elaborate staging to make Nathan believe she was dead. And now, 5 years later, Emma was there to finish what her great-aunt had started. That night, Emma dressed with more care than she ever had in her life. She chose a black silk dress she had found in the closet, which subtly but undeniably accentuated her curves. She tied her hair in a low bun that left her neck exposed, and applied just light makeup that made her eyes shine like 2 dark stars. When night, she went down for dinner. She saw Nathan interrupt his conversation mid-sentence on the phone. He watched her descend the staircase with an intensity that made the air between them vibrate with electrical tension. Emma could feel feminine power running through her veins like wine, the same deadly seduction that the women of her family carried as a weapon. "You look beautiful," Nathan murmured when she approached, and for the first time his voice carried real vulnerability. "I'm feeling more myself." Emma smiled, and this time there was no pretense in the gesture. "As if I'm finally understanding my place in this world." During dinner, she studied him openly, asking questions about his business, his tastes, his ambitions. Nathan responded with growing animation, clearly enchanted to finally have a companion who showed genuine interest in his life. He didn't realize that each answer was a piece of information that Emma carefully stored, building a map of his weaknesses. "You want to kiss me," Emma said when they finished dessert, her voice low but loaded with certainty. Nathan choked on his wine. "What?" "Since I arrived here, you look at me as if you want to devour me, but also as if you're afraid to touch me." Emma leaned forward, letting the neckline of the dress reveal just a suggestion of skin. "Why are you afraid of me, Nathan?" He stood up abruptly, walking to the window, as if he needed physical distance to maintain control. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly." Emma stood up too, approaching him with calculated steps. "I'm taking what is mine by right." When she touched his shoulder, Nathan turned like a wounded animal. His eyes were wild, and Emma saw in them the same desperate hunger that had probably destroyed all the women who came before her. "I could hurt you," he whispered, but his hands trembled when they rose to touch her face. "You could try." Emma smiled, and there was something predatory in that expression. "But I can hurt you too." And then she kissed him. The kiss was a declaration of war disguised as surrender. Emma pressed her lips against Nathan's with a hunger that surprised them both, her hands rising to tangle in his hair while she took what she wanted without asking permission. For a moment, Nathan was paralyzed, as if he couldn't process that the prey had become the predator. Then something primitive took over him, and he pulled her against his body with a force that could have broken a more fragile woman. Emma didn't break. Instead, she bit his lower lip until she tasted the metallic flavor of blood, a silent warning that she would not be easily conquered. Nathan moaned against her mouth, a sound of pain and pleasure that sent waves of heat through her body. When they finally separated, both were breathing heavily, and Emma saw in his eyes a mixture of desire and something that could have been fear. "You don't know what you're getting into," Nathan whispered, but his hands remained firm on her waist, as if he couldn't let her go even if he wanted. "Tess, I know exactly what I'm getting into." Emma tilted her head, studying his expression with scientific interest. "The question is, do you know?" Nathan released her abruptly, backing away as if she were made of fire. He ran his hands through his hair, disturbing the usual perfection of his appearance, and Emma realized with satisfaction that she had managed to crack his facade of absolute control. "You should go to your room," he said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. "Should I?" Emma tilted her head, a smile playing on her lips still swollen from the kiss. "Or do you want me to go because you're afraid of what might happen if I stay?" Nathan turned to her with flaming eyes. "I could take you right here, right now, against this window, and there would be nothing you could do to stop me." "You could." Emma approached him again, stopping just a palm's width away. "But you won't, because part of you knows that if you force me, you'll lose the only thing you really want." "And what's that?" "My choice." Emma raised her hand to touch his chest, feeling the racing heart under the silk shirt. "All the others you took by force in one way or another, but with me you want me to choose you. You want me to come to you because I desire to, not because I have no alternative." Nathan grabbed her wrist, his fingers tightening with enough force to leave marks. "And if I get tired of waiting, then you'll discover that I'm not like the others." Emma didn't try to free herself from his grip, allowing him to feel the calm pulse in her veins. "You'll discover that Bennett blood carries secrets you still don't understand." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in the bed that had been Olivia's, looking at the ceiling while processing every moment of the evening. The kiss had changed something fundamental between her and Nathan, shifting the balance of power in a way she knew was irreversible. But it had also revealed something about herself that frightened her, a dark part of her soul that had responded to his touch with a hunger she couldn't completely deny. At 3 in the morning, she heard footsteps in the corridor. They weren't the cautious steps of Mrs. Winters making her night rounds. but something heavier, more determined. Emma rose silently, walking to the door and pressing her ear against the wood. The footsteps stopped exactly in front of her room. "I know you're awake." Nathan's voice was low, loaded with a tension that made the hairs on Emma's arms stand up. "I can feel you breathing on the other side of this door." Emma remained silent, but her heart accelerated. There was something different in his voice, a dangerous quality that wasn't present during dinner. "You think you're playing a game with me, Emma. You think you can manipulate me the same way Olivia tried." The footsteps resumed, and Emma realized he was pacing back and forth in front of her door. "But you don't understand that I've learned from my mistakes, that this time I'm prepared." The doorknob turned slowly. Emma backed away, her heart beating, so hard she was sure he could hear it through the door. But the door didn't open. Nathan had keys to all the rooms in the house, she knew that. If he wanted to enter, nothing would stop him. "Good night, my dear Emma," he whispered, and she heard his footsteps moving away down the corridor. The next morning, Emma went down for breakfast, determined to maintain the advantage she had gained the night before. But Nathan wasn't in the dining room. In his place, she found Mrs. Winters setting the table with abrupt movements that betrayed nervousness. "Where is Mr. Blackwood?" Emma asked, serving herself coffee. "Left early for the office, said he wouldn't." "Be back for lunch." Mrs. Winters avoided meeting Emma's eyes. "Maybe it's better that way. This house gets different when he's restless." Emma was about to ask what she meant by that when she heard the sound of a car coming up the driveway. Through the window, she saw a black Porsche she didn't recognize park at the main entrance. A man got out of the vehicle, and Emma felt her blood freeze. He was tall like Nathan, but where her captor had muscles built by discipline, this man possessed the natural elegance of a born predator. Almost white blonde hair fell in waves over broad shoulders, and even at a distance Emma could see that his eyes were an icy blue that perfectly matched the predatory smile playing on his lips. Daniel. Mrs. Winters whispered the name like a curse, dropping the cup she was holding. The porcelain shattered on the marble floor with a noise that echoed through the house like an omen. "Who is Daniel?" Emma asked, although she already knew the answer. "Mr. Nathan's adopted brother, the one who was banished from the family 10 years ago after—" Mrs. Winters paused, searching for words. "After a very serious incident. He should never be here. Never." The doorbell rang, a melodious sound that seemed obscene in the tension of the moment. Mrs. Winters looked at Emma with terrified eyes. "Don't open the door. Pretend you're not home. He is dangerous in ways that Mr. Nathan can't even imagine." But Emma was already walking toward the main entrance. This was exactly what she needed. An ally, even if he was as dangerous as the man who kept her prisoner. Olivia's letters had been clear. Daniel Blackwood knew all of Nathan's secrets and had nothing to lose. When she opened the door, Daniel was casually leaning against the doorframe, as if he had all the time in the world. Up close, she could see that he was devastatingly handsome in a way Nathan would never be, with delicate features that contrasted with an aura of controlled danger. "You must be Emma." His voice was softer than Nathan's, but carried the same underlying power. "I've heard a lot about you, and I about you." Emma kept her voice firm, though every instinct screamed for her to close the door and run. "Though it seems you shouldn't be here." Daniel laughed, a genuinely amused sound. "My dear brother didn't mention my existence. How rude of him, especially considering I've come to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" Daniel's blue eyes shone with something that could have been malice or amusement. "The kind that could save you from becoming just another name on the spines of the books in Nathan's secret library." Emma felt the world spin slightly. He knew about the library. Of course he knew. He probably knew about everything. "Come in," she said, opening the door completely. "I think we have a lot to talk about." When Daniel crossed the threshold of the house, Emma felt she had just released a force that would change everything. For better or worse, she was about to find out. Daniel moved through the mansion as if he owned the place, his blue eyes capturing every detail. As he walked down the corridors, Emma had begun to consider her prison. There was a disturbing familiarity in the way he navigated the spaces, as if the years of exile hadn't erased his muscle memory of the house where he grew up. He changed the decoration, Daniel commented casually, stopping before a family portrait that showed a younger Nathan, next to an older man Emma assumed was their father. Before there was a painting of our mother here, Victoria Blackwood, the only woman Nathan ever truly loved, until she killed herself when he was 17. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. She killed herself. Jumped from the 3rd floor. Window on a stormy night. Left only a letter saying she couldn't live anymore knowing what she had created. Daniel turned to Emma, and she saw something dark dancing in his eyes. Nathan never told that part of the story to his collections. Did he? They settled in the main library, and Emma served tea while Daniel examined the books on the shelves with casual interest. She noticed that he carefully avoided certain sections, as if he knew exactly where Nathan kept his most dangerous secrets. You said you came to make an offer. Emma sat in a leather armchair, keeping enough distance to observe every micro-expression on his face. I'm listening. Daniel smiled, and Emma understood why Mrs. Winters had been so terrified. There was something venomous in that smile, a promise of chaos that made Nathan seem predictable in comparison. Straight to the point. I admire that in a woman. He drank his tea slowly, as if savoring not just the beverage but the moment. My offer is simple. Freedom. Complete, immediate, no conditions. In exchange for what? In exchange for you helping me destroy my dear adopted brother. Daniel's eyes gleamed with an intensity that made Emma reconsider whether he really was less dangerous than Nathan. You see, Emma, Nathan has a fatal weakness. He believes he can control everything and everyone around him. But there are certain things that not all the money in the world can buy. Emma leaned forward, intrigued despite the alarms screaming in her mind. Like what? Like the forgiveness of a woman he destroyed. Like the possibility of redemption through true love. Like the chance to finally free himself from the ghosts that have haunted him since our mother's death. Daniel set the cup aside and leaned forward too, creating a bubble of conspiratorial intimacy. Nathan is obsessed with you because he sees in you the chance to redo what he destroyed with Olivia. But what if I told you that Olivia isn't dead? Emma's world stopped. What? Oh yes, my dear. Olivia Claire Bennett is very much alive, living under another name in a small town in Vermont, raising the daughter she conceived with Nathan. Daniel observed Emma's shocked expression with evident satisfaction. I helped her escape that night. The fire was real, but she had already gone out the window when the flames started, a small theatrical staging to convince Nathan she was dead. Emma felt tears burning her eyes. Olivia was alive. Her great-aunt had managed to escape and was raising the child in safety, but then reality hit her like a punch to the stomach. If she's alive, why didn't she come rescue you? Why didn't she denounce Nathan to the authorities? Daniel laughed bitterly. Because Nathan has tentacles in all the places that matter. Judges, police officers, politicians all owe him favors. Olivia knows that if she appears, not only will she truly die this time, but the child too. Then why are you telling me this? Why risk her safety? Because it's time for Nathan to pay for his sins, and because you, my dear Emma, are the only person in the world capable of completely destroying him. Daniel stood up, walking to the window. You see, Nathan doesn't just desire you, he loves you. For real this time. For the first time since our mother, he has found someone who could save him from himself. Emma felt something cold settling in her chest. And you want me to use that love against him? I want you to seduce him completely, to make him fall so deeply in love that he won't be able to live without you. And then, Daniel turned to her with a smile that was pure evil. I want you to abandon him, to disappear one night as Olivia did, but this time without leaving clues. I want you to make him feel the same pain he caused all the others. And afterward, my dear, you will be free. I guarantee this personally. I'll arrange a new identity, a new life where Nathan will never be able to find you. Daniel approached her again, his hypnotic blue eyes. You'll be able to visit Olivia and meet your cousin. You can have the family you've always wanted. Emma was silent for a long moment, processing everything she had heard. Daniel's offer was tempting, almost irresistible. But there was something about him that made her hesitate, a quality that suggested his motives weren't as altruistic as he wanted to make them seem. "Why do you hate Nathan so much?" she finally asked. Daniel's face hardened, and for the first time since he arrived, Emma saw genuine emotion cross his features. "Because he killed our mother, as certainly as if he had pushed her out the window with his own hands. Because he stole my inheritance and exiled me from the only family I had, and because," Aunt Daniel paused, as if debating whether he should continue, "because he also stole from me the only woman I ever loved." "Who?" "Jessica Reynolds, the first in his collection." Daniel's voice was loaded with an old pain that made Emma feel an unexpected pang of sympathy. "I had loved her since we were teenagers. We were going to get married. But then Nathan saw her at a party, decided he wanted her, and—" He made a vague gesture. "Well, you already know how these stories end." Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of all the tragedies that house had witnessed. Generations of women destroyed, families shattered, lives lost on the altar of one man's obsession. "If I accept your proposal," she said slowly, "how can I be sure you're not as dangerous as he is?" Daniel leaned forward until their faces were just inches apart. Emma could feel his breath against her skin, hot and disturbingly intimate. "You can't," he whispered, "but you can be sure that I am your only chance of getting out of here alive. Because Nathan will never let you go, Emma. Never. And eventually, when you try to run like all the others tried, you'll discover that some men prefer to possess ashes than to let the fire burn freely." The sound of tires on the road made them both turn toward the window. Nathan's Mercedes was coming up the driveway, arriving earlier than expected. "It seems our time is up." Daniel rose gracefully, smoothing his jacket. "Think about my offer, Emma, but don't take too long to decide. Opportunities like this don't appear twice." He headed for the door, but stopped at the threshold to look at her one last time. "Oh, and Emma, when Nathan asks about my visit, and he will ask, tell him I came to deliver a message." Daniel smiled with pure malice. "Tell him that the dead sometimes rise to haunt the living." Emma barely had time to process Daniel's exit when she heard Nathan's familiar footsteps echoing through the entrance hall. Each step sounded like a war drum, loaded with a tension that made all the hairs on her arms stand up. She forced herself to remain seated in the library, pretending to read a book she couldn't focus on, while her heart beat so hard she was certain he could hear it from a distance. "Emma!" Nathan's voice cut through the air when he appeared at the library door. There was something different in his tone, a dangerous quality she hadn't noticed before. "Where is Mrs. Winters?" "In the kitchen, I believe. Why?" Emma raised her eyes from the book, forcing herself to appear casual despite the knot growing in her stomach. Nathan entered the library, but didn't sit down. Instead, he stood near the window, hands crossed behind his back, in a posture that Emma had learned to recognize as a sign of imminent danger. He was wearing the dark grey suit that accentuated the width of his shoulders, but there was something disheveled in his usual appearance, as if he had run his hand through his hair repeatedly. "Did we have visitors today?" he asked, and Emma felt the world tilt slightly. "Visitors?" she repeated, buying time while deciding how much of the truth she could reveal without signing her own death warrant. "Emma." Nathan turned to her, and she saw something wild gleaming in his dark eyes. "My security informed me that a black Porsche was here today, a car I recognized immediately. So I'm going to ask just once. What did my brother want?" The tension in the air was so thick Emma could cut it with a knife. She closed the book slowly, using the movement to mask the tremor in her hands. Daniel had told her to tell Nathan about his visit, but hadn't specified exactly what to tell. "He came to offer me freedom." Emma decided on partial truth, carefully observing Nathan's reaction. Nathan's face contorted into an expression that mixed fury and something that could have been pain. "And you accepted?" "Should I have accepted?" Emma tilted her head, studying him with renewed interest. He told me interesting things about you, Nathan, about your mother, about Jessica Reynolds, about why you really hate each other. Nathan crossed the space between them in 3 long strides, stopping so close that Emma could feel the heat radiating from his body. There was something predatory in his movements, but also a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. Daniel is a born liar. Always has been. Everything he told you was calculated to turn you against me. Nathan's hands were trembling slightly, and Emma realized he was struggling to maintain control. He doesn't care about your freedom. He just wants to use you to destroy me. And you? Emma rose slowly, forcing Nathan to take a step back. Do you care about me, or just about what I represent? About the second chance to completely possess a Bennett woman? The question hit Nathan like a physical slap. He backed away as if she had raised her hand against him, and Emma saw something break behind his eyes. You don't understand. His voice came out hoarse, loaded with a raw emotion that made Emma's chest tighten. I tried to stay away from you, tried to resist what I feel since the moment I saw you sleeping in that bed. But you make me feel things I thought I had buried with Olivia. What kind of things? Emma took a step toward him and saw surprise cross Nathan's face when he realized she was approaching, not backing away. Hope. The word came out, like a confession forcibly extracted. The possibility that maybe, this time, I could love someone without destroying her in the process. Emma extended her hand, lightly touching Nathan's chest through the silk shirt. She could feel his heart beating uncontrollably, as fast as her own. There was something deeply intimate in that moment, a mutual vulnerability that was more dangerous than any physical threat. What if I said you can, she whispered, that maybe the possibility you're looking for has always been here, waiting for you to be brave enough to take it. Nathan covered her hand with his, their fingers intertwining, as if she were an anchor in a stormy sea. Shall you hate me? You should hate me. I brought you here against your will, kept you prisoner. You brought me home, Emma interrupted, surprising herself with the sincerity in her voice. For the first time in my life, I have a bed that doesn't creak, food on the table, clothes that aren't second-hand. You may have bought me, Nathan, but you also gave me things I never thought I had the right to possess. And that's enough? Material luxury in exchange for your freedom? Emma leaned in closer until her lips almost touched his. What freedom? The freedom to work 16 hours a day just to survive? The freedom to sleep on the floor of a room infested with rats? The freedom to die young and forgotten as my grandmother died? She shook her head slowly. That wasn't freedom, Nathan. It was just a different prison. Then why did Daniel offered me freedom, yes, but in exchange for becoming a weapon against you, in exchange for pretending love and then destroying you with abandonment. Emma saw something deadly gleam in Nathan's eyes and hurried to continue. But I don't want to destroy you. I want to understand you. Nathan studied her for a long moment, as if looking for signs of deception in her features. Why? Because I saw you break when you talked about your mother. I saw the pain you carry when you look at Olivia's photographs. I saw how your hands tremble when you think you might lose me too. Emma raised her free hand to touch his face, feeling the muscles contract under her fingers. And because, against all logic and good sense, I care about you. Emma, Nathan closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like a man drinking water for the first time in days. Show me, she whispered. Show me that you can love without destroying. Prove that I can trust you with my heart, just as you're trusting me with yours. When Nathan opened his eyes, Emma saw something different in them. The predatory intensity was still there, but now it was tempered by something deeper, more vulnerable. He pulled her into his arms with a gentleness that contrasted with the strength she knew he possessed. If I show you who I really am, he murmured against her hair, if I lower all my defenses and let you see even the darkest corners of my soul, will you stay, or will you run like all the others did? Emma moved away enough to look into his eyes. Try and find out. Nathan smiled then, and for the first time since she'd met him, there was genuine happiness in that expression. You're dangerous, Emma Bennett. more dangerous than any woman I've ever known." "Good." Emma smiled back, and there was something predatory in her own expression. "Because you need someone dangerous enough to match you." That night, when Emma finally went up to her room, she found a gift waiting on her bed. It was the golden key brooch that had belonged to Olivia, polished, until it shone like new gold. Along with it was a note written in Nathan's elegant handwriting. "To the woman who carries the keys not only to my heart, but to my salvation. Wear it knowing that this time, unlike all the others, you have the power to free me." Emma held the brooch against her chest, feeling the weight of the responsibility it represented. She was playing a dangerous game, balancing on the tightrope between manipulation and genuine feelings that were beginning to bloom in her heart. But one thing was certain: there was no turning back. She had plunged headlong into the turbulent waters of Nathan's obsession, and now her only option was to learn to swim or drown trying. The weeks that followed were like living inside a feverish dream. Nathan courted Emma with an intensity that bordered on adoration, but there was a gentleness in his gestures that she had never expected to find in a man known for his calculated cruelty. He brought rare flowers from the mansion's gardens every morning, leaving them on the table beside her bed along with verses by American poets written in his elegant handwriting. He had dresses made to measure that enhanced her natural beauty without objectifying her, and organized intimate dinners where they talked for hours about literature, art, and the dreams Emma had never dared to verbalize. But it was in the fourth week that everything changed. Emma woke in the middle of the night to the sound of screams coming from the garden. She rose quickly, running to the window, and what she saw made her blood freeze. Nathan was in the middle of the rose garden, naked, from the waist up, screaming at the full moon that shone like an accusing eye in the sky. His back was covered with scratches that gleamed red in the moonlight, as if he had struggled against invisible claws. Emma ran down, not caring about the fact that she was wearing only a silk nightgown. When she reached the garden, she found Nathan kneeling among the roses, his hands buried in the soil, sobbing with a pain that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. Nathan. She approached carefully, as if he were a wounded animal that might attack if startled. What happened? He raised his eyes to her, and Emma felt her heart break. There was a wild madness in his gaze, but also a raw vulnerability that made her want to wrap him in her arms and protect him from the entire world. "She was here," he whispered, his voice hoarse from screaming. "My mother. She was standing there near the white roses wearing the dress she wore on the night when... And she told me, I'm a monster, that I turn love into poison, that I destroy everything I touch." Emma knelt in the soil beside him, ignoring the dirt that stained her expensive nightgown. "It was just a nightmare. Your mother isn't here." "It wasn't a nightmare." Nathan grabbed her wrists with desperate force. "She comes to visit me every full moon since I was 17. Reminds me of what I am, of what I'll never be able to change." Tears ran down his face without him seeming to notice. "And now she's... right. I'm doing to you the same thing I did to all the others. I'm turning you into another golden prisoner in my collection." "You're not." Emma gently touched his face, wiping away the tears with her thumbs. "Because I chose to stay. Not out of fear, not out of obligation, but because I want to be here with you." Nathan studied her face in the moonlight, looking for signs of deception. "How can you want to stay with someone like me? Someone who keeps books about women as if they were laboratory specimens. Someone who..." Emma silenced him with a kiss. It was different from all the kisses they had shared before, loaded not with passion or strategy, but with tender compassion for a man who carried as many wounds as she did. When they separated, Emma saw something new in his eyes, genuine hope. "Because you're not just your sins," she whispered, "just as I'm not just my poverty. We are the choices we make from now on, Nathan, and I choose you." That night they made love for the first time. It wasn't the possessive taking that Emma had feared, nor the calculated performance that Nathan had enacted with other women. It was a mutual discovery, vulnerable and intense, where each touch carried the weight of souls that had finally found their place in the world. Afterward, as they rested intertwined between silk sheets, Nathan told Emma the whole truth. About his mother's death, about how his obsession with control had been born from the fear of losing those he loved, about Jessica, Melissa, Vanessa, and all the other women he had tried to love in the only way he knew, through absolute possession. And about Olivia, the only one who had managed to break through his defenses only to flee in the same way his mother had fled. "I didn't kill them," he murmured against Emma's hair, "but I destroyed them in other ways. Some fled in the dead of night, others had nervous breakdowns, some simply disappeared the same way they arrived." His voice was loaded with a guilt that had been corroding his soul for decades. "I thought that if I kept them close enough, if I controlled every aspect of their lives, I could never lose them. But you can't force love, can you?" "No." Emma turned to face him, seeing for the first time the man behind the mask of power. "But you can offer your heart and hope the other person chooses to accept it." "And do you accept?" The question came out as a desperate whisper. "My heart, with all its scars and darkness." "I do." Emma kissed the scar on his shoulder, the one she had noticed on the first day. "But you need to accept mine too. With all the anger I carry, all the thirst for vengeance against a world that denied me basic rights, all the manipulation I used to get where I am." Nathan laughed softly, a genuinely happy sound for the first time in years. "You think I didn't know you were manipulating me? That I didn't notice every calculated movement, every strategic look?" He tilted his head to look at her. "I allowed it because I wanted to see how far you would go, and because for the first time someone was fighting with me, not just surrendering." Emma felt a mixture of embarrassment and admiration. "You knew all along." "I knew you were playing a game. What I didn't know was that at some point you would stop pretending and start feeling for real." Nathan pulled her closer. "Just as I stopped trying to possess you and started loving you." That's when they heard the noise, glass breaking somewhere in the house, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the floor below. Nathan stiffened. Beside Emma, all protective instincts instantly awakening. "Stay here," he whispered, rising to put on his pants. But Emma was already getting up too, pulling on a silk robe. "No, we go together." They descended the stairs silently, Nathan in front with Emma right behind. The living room was in semi-darkness, but there was enough light to see the figure waiting for them, casually seated in Nathan's favorite leather armchair. Daniel. He had a cut on his lip and a bruise forming around his left eye, as if he'd been in a fight, but his blue eyes shone with a dangerous intensity that made all Emma's instincts scream. "Forgive the intrusion." Daniel smiled. "But there was no humor in that expression. But I had to come personally to deliver the news." "Get out of my house." Nathan stepped forward, placing himself between Daniel and Emma. "Oh, but the news is so interesting." Daniel leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Emma. "Olivia is dead, my dear, for real this time, along with the child she was carrying." Emma's world stopped. "What?" "A fire in the house where she was hiding. Very convenient, very final. Nothing left to identify." Daniel turned to Nathan with flaming eyes. "It seems you finally got what you always wanted, dear brother. Completely eliminated the only witness to your crimes." "I didn't," Nathan began, but Daniel interrupted him. "Of course it wasn't you directly, but your thugs are very efficient, aren't they?" Daniel rose slowly like a predator preparing to attack. "The question now is, what will Emma do when she discovers that the man she's fallen in love with is a murderer?" The silence that followed Daniel's accusation was deafening. Emma felt the world spin around her, but not for the reason Daniel expected. There was something wrong with his story, a false note that made all her instincts scream. She had learned to recognize lies during her years of poverty, when a misplaced word could mean the difference between eating or going hungry. "When?" Emma asked, her voice strangely calm. "When exactly did this fire happen?" Daniel hesitated for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. 3 days ago, in the early morning." "Interesting." Emma stepped forward, ignoring the tension vibrating between the two brothers. "Because I called the number you gave me 2 days ago, Daniel. And a woman answered. A woman who identified herself as Olivia and who told me she had been expecting my call for 5 years. Daniel's face contorted in an expression of pure fury. "You're lying." "Am I?" Emma smiled, and there was something predatory in that expression that dangerously resembled Nathan. "Or are you desperate to separate us because you realized your plan to use his pain against him has failed?" Nathan turned to Emma, surprise and hope competing for space in his eyes. "You spoke with Olivia?" "I did, and she told me many interesting things." Emma kept her eyes fixed on Daniel, watching how he contracted with each word. "Like the fact that you didn't help her escape out of altruism. You blackmailed her into fleeing because you wanted to destroy Nathan, and when she refused to be your weapon, you threatened to reveal her location to him." "Those are lies," Daniel began, but Emma interrupted him. "Olivia told me you were always obsessed with her, even before Nathan met her, that you tried to force yourself on her when you were younger, and that she only accepted your rescue because she had no choice." Emma tilted her head, studying Daniel like an interesting specimen. "She also told me that you killed Jessica Reynolds." The world seemed to stop. Daniel went as pale as a ghost, and Nathan stepped forward with flaming eyes. "What?" Nathan's voice came out as a low roar. "Jessica didn't kill herself out of despair," Emma continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. "She killed herself because you threatened her, Daniel. You said that if she didn't pretend to love Nathan and then destroy him publicly, you would reveal secrets that would ruin her family. And when she refused to be your puppet—" "Enough!" Daniel exploded, his entire facade of control crumbling. "You know nothing. Jessica loved me. She chose to die rather than live without me. She chose to die rather than live with the monster you are." Emma took another step forward, and for the first time since she met him, saw real fear in Daniel's eyes. "Just as your mother chose to die rather than have to watch you destroy your own family from within." The confession escaped Daniel's lips before he could contain it. "My mother rejected me first. She always preferred Nathan, always treated him as the true son while I was just the orphan they took in out of charity. And you killed her for that. It wasn't a question." Daniel laughed, but the sound was loaded with madness. "I freed her from having to pretend she loved me, just as I freed Jessica from having to choose between us." His eyes fixed on Emma with a sick intensity. "And now I'm going to free you from having to live with the illusion that you can save a man who has been condemned since birth." Daniel moved with surprising speed, drawing a knife he had hidden in his jacket. But Emma was prepared. Years of life in the slums had sharpened her survival reflexes, and she threw herself to the side, while Nathan advanced like a furious animal. What followed was brutal and quick. Nathan and Daniel struggled across the floor of the room, the knife changing hands several times, while expensive furniture shattered around them. Emma shouted for Mrs. Winters to call the police, but she knew this would be too late to help. It was Daniel who gained the final advantage, pinning Nathan against the floor with the knife pressed against his throat. His blue eyes shone with sick triumph. "Now you'll understand what it is to lose everything," Daniel gasped, blood running from a cut on his forehead. "You'll die knowing that Emma will discover the truth about you, that she'll choose me when she knows I'm the only one who can protect her from becoming another victim of the Blackwood curse." "There's just one problem with your plan," Emma said, her voice strangely calm. Daniel turned his head to look at her, keeping the knife at Nathan's neck. "What?" "I already know the whole truth about Nathan, and I still choose him." Emma raised her hand, showing the key brooch that shone in the light of the room. "And now I'm going to use the power that Bennett women have always carried to end the cycle of vengeance you started." Emma pressed a sharp tip of the brooch against Daniel's skin, right at the base of the neck, where an artery visibly pulsed. "Drop the knife, Daniel, or find out if I'm bluffing." Daniel hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, Nathan managed to turn the tables. In seconds, Daniel was disarmed and immobilized, the knife now in Nathan's hands. "You were always weak," Nathan said, his voice loaded with deadly coldness. "Always needed to destroy others to feel powerful, but it's over. Don't kill him." Emma touched Nathan's arm gently. He's not worth carrying that weight on your conscience." Nathan looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "You're right, some fates are worse than death." 3 hours later, the police had taken Daniel away. The evidence Emma had gathered through her conversations with Olivia, combined with the records Nathan had kept about suspicious deaths over the years, was enough to build a solid case. Daniel would face justice for multiple homicides, and this time, there was no political influence that could save him. Emma and Nathan found themselves in the garden where everything had begun hours before, watching the dawn paint the sky pink and gold. Emma wore the key brooch pinned to her silk robe, and Nathan held her hand as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "Olivia is really alive?" Nathan asked, his voice loaded with cautious hope. "She is, and she wants to meet you again. Not as the woman who was your prisoner, but as the great-aunt of the woman you love." Emma smiled, squeezing his hand. "She said she never managed to hate you completely, because she saw the pain that transformed you into the man you were, and that she was happy when she learned I had found a way to heal it. And our daughter." "Our cousin," Emma gently corrected. "She's 5 years old, her name is Lily, and she loves to draw. Olivia says she has your eyes." Nathan was silent for a long moment, processing the possibility of meeting the daughter he thought he had lost forever. "And you? What do you want for the future? I want us to transform this mansion full of ghosts into a home full of love. I want you to meet your daughter, and for her to grow up knowing that her father learned to love without destroying. And if I fail, if the ghosts return, then we'll face them together." Emma kissed him softly. "Because true love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stay even when it's difficult, about healing each other's wounds, about building something greater than the sum of our broken parts." A year later, the Blackwood mansion had completely transformed. The corridors that once echoed only silences now vibrated with Lily's laughter, who had moved there along with Olivia after Daniel's last henchmen were imprisoned. The secret library was transformed into an art studio where Lily drew while Emma wrote. She had discovered a talent for storytelling beginning with her own. Nathan still carried scars, still fought against the ghosts of the past, but now he had Emma by his side, a woman strong enough to face his darkness and patient enough to help him find the light. And for the first time in his life, love wasn't a prison, but the key that opened all doors to a future they would build together. On the night of their wedding, held in the same garden where they had almost lost each other, Emma wore the key brooch as something borrowed, something old, connecting her to generations of Bennett women who had fought for love and freedom. And when Nathan kissed her before Olivia and Lily, before Mrs. Winters who wept with joy, before a starry sky that finally seemed to bless instead of curse, Emma knew she had found her place in the world. Not as a golden prisoner or a substitute,